Tim, you left off, we were at Mount Sinai, you got up on the mountain and everything was going smooth, but then the world started falling apart before your eyes.
Well, when we came down, that's when the tone changed. I think what happened was the locals came and talked with our guides, and our guides weren't from that part of Saudi Arabia. They were from a completely different area, and there was a conflict that started to occur. We had permission and an itinerary which was approved, and but the locals basically said, you need to get out of here. I mean, you can't stay here. And that became a challenge all throughout the trip where we were supposed to be one place according to the itinerary with the Saudi government, but the locals were not happy with us being there. So we did actually, we had the local chieftain or whatever come and visit. They're the hospitality is wonderful. And you have to understand that the local people have been trying to protect these locations because they believe they're sacred as well. And they don't want someone coming in taking anything. And we weren't going to do that. I was just there with a camera filming, and I had gotten a permission to bring a camera along and everything. But it was such a politically hot potato. But when this chieftain came, they brought a lamb or a goat, I think it might have been, and they, we had I think Jim and Penny called it a Passover meal. I'm just saying that you had everything, the kind of ingredients that you would have, but we ate, roasted, we had all the things that you would have if you were going to do this. They were kind of pointing that out. And at the mountain,
the cooking on the sides, the bread, the unleavened, that's just all part of the culture. That's the way the Bedouins cook today. And with the lamb, it would be the elements of a Passover meal. Yeah.
So anyway, the Caldwells were observant of that. And then what we ended up doing was that then we had to leave. And I think, I'm trying to remember in our itinerary which place we went to. So I'm not as clear. You could ask them about that. But when we did get to the location for the split rock, that's when basically we were told, we were there for about several hours. And then when we came down, we were told, you have to leave here in 5 minutes or we're going to kill you. That was sort of that clear.
Right. And while they're saying this, they have got the arms with them. I mean, they've got the rifles. There's that threat is taken seriously, is it not?
Yeah, right. I mean, you're not going to basically wait to find out, And so, they were trying to enforce the idea that they didn't want anybody there, and so we had to go. And I had been filming. I had several cameras, and I was filming. I'd probably filmed some of the best footage that I had ever filmed, and I'd filmed in Egypt, and so I had a lot of beautiful footage of all these locations. At Jebel Lawz, at Split Rock, where the Caldwells have been, and then we went to the sea and to the sea crossing area over at Aqaba, and we went through all the different areas that the Caldwells had thought were locations where the Israelites would have come up from the sea and gone on to the mountain. And I think we might have even been over where Jethro had lived, and so. Boy, was I feeling great about all this. But then when it came time to leave the country, I had to forfeit my footage. And we were able to keep our still photography, but we weren't able to keep any video.
Oh, that's a tragedy. I mean, this is the next movies that are going to be shown, and you've been there. You've actually, in high definition, you've filmed all these artifacts that are there. The altar of the golden calf, the split rock, the altar, all these things. And now, just as you're leaving the country, it all disappears.
Yeah. And you ask yourself, well, what was this? What's going to happen here? It's puzzling. But it was very valuable for us to go there. And so for a number of years, we were hoping that, it would be returned or we would get this footage back, but we never got it back. And And then there was this, you talked about this long season, this long gestation of trying to understand what is it that we're trying to do here. It seemed like there were so many pieces and so many people involved, and it was such a giant project that kept getting bigger and bigger. And eventually I started to understand that it was that big, that this is an enormous story. And it's an enormous investigation. I would probably say it's one of the biggest investigations of the Bible that's ever happened. And it's, it includes all different viewpoints. So what we decided and what we learned over the years was that, the first film took 12 years to make. And I realized I couldn't take 12 years to make any more films, or I'm not going to be around, if you try to make a lot of them. So, what we started to do is we were being trained, I was being trained as to how to basically go about this. And that I'm really more of I'm a documentary journalist, and I'm hearing, we learned that was a real value in listening to different viewpoints, because it allows you to see, well, which one is stronger? Why do people say the traditional mountain is where it is? And somebody says it's Har Karkum is where Mount Sinai is. And other people say Jebel Oz. And so what I have done now is gone and started to investigate the entire story. And I've got, several researchers now, and we're continuing to film. We have these trips that go off into different parts of the world and filming each year to develop this series of films on patterns. And the film that I have called The Moses Controversy is coming up in the future. And someone would say, well, what's that about? And why would you do that? And I don't know if your viewers are aware of this, but there's a lot of criticism about Moses even writing this story. So what they're saying is Moses really didn't write the first 5 books of the Bible. That this was written 1,000 years later by people who didn't even live in the area. They were just creating a history for themselves. And I thought, if we're going to take the word seriously, if there's supposed to be an altar at some place, we have to know, was it really truly written? Because if you're going to say, I'm looking for an altar or pillars, or these events happen where they were worshiping a golden calf, I thought the next place I have to start, as much as I want to go to the sea crossing or want to go to Jebel Oz or want to go investigate these locations, I have to solve this next problem. And that has to do with, could Moses have been the author of the first books of the Bible? And that's what the Moses Controversy is. And we uncover, again, amazing evidence, a pattern of evidence that shows that the first, the ability to write the alphabet shows up at the same time in history as the Israelites were in, that we believe, in Egypt. That same time period is when the alphabet starts to show up. And that's something we'll talk about in the future. But that's the reason why, as I've gone into this, Michael, I've realized that if I'm going to be thorough about it, and if I'm going to build a case, I have to really investigate all the possibilities, put the evidence on the table, and then let the audience decide, what is this? Because what happens is that the next generation, a lot of them are hearing negative things about the Bible, and they're basically saying, well, I don't know if I believe that. That's just a fairy tale. And my professor at the university tells me it's a fairy tale. And so I'm here to say, you know what? There are patterns of evidence. We're taking a scientific approach to look for these things. And guess what? You can't plant that evidence.
That's right. Now, I know that the Israel Department of Antiquities, Josias, refused to even look at the evidence of Mount Sinai because he said and stated it, that Mount Sinai is a literary invention and no one will find it. He said it was all made up. And this is the position of professional archaeologists, so to speak. And we find that people will make up stories. They will just, anything to take people away from what the scripture says. But you have found evidence and patterns of evidence of the writing of the scripture. And I'm very excited about this next film that's going to be out. And I want you to come back just before the film releases, and I want you to take us a bit on that journey. Will you do that with us?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And when we do this type of filmmaking and this type of work, I've at times, the Israelites were following a pillar of fire. All of a sudden they go, hey, the pillar of fire is moving, the cloud is moving. And, sometimes I feel like that a little bit. I know in general where we're going to be going. And I know that the big question is, does God act in history? Has God acted in history? And have those events of God acting in history been recorded? And it's telling us a context of the world that we live in. That, do we live in a world that was created by a God, by a God, or do we live in a world that evolved? And it's just sort of evolving here. And these are the big questions that people are asking, and that's the reason why I think it's so important to find answers to these questions, because the children that are and grandchildren, I have 4 children that are married and 8 grandchildren, and they're asking questions about these things because because they're living in this culture, and you can see that people are looking for answers, and that's the reason why I think it's important. Some people have faith and they don't need to have necessarily anything proven to them. But I've met a lot of other people that are comforted, that knowing that, wait a minute, are you telling me that there's a pattern here that matches the story of Joseph in Egypt? Are you telling me that there's plagues and there's all these things that are happening? We're saying, yeah, there it is. You can see it. And what's interesting, Michael, is that the archaeologists want to pin down this evidence to one time. I'm sorry, they want to basically say the Exodus had to happen at one time in history, and they're not open to anything else. They've decided that, and the case is closed. They do not want to reopen the case. And basically what Patterns of Evidence is doing is saying we're going to reopen this case.
Well, I appreciate you reopening the case, Tim.
Michael, the idea that Saudi Arabia, that Midian is in Saudi Arabia and that the mountain might be in Saudi Arabia. In our research, we found out that this wasn't necessarily a new idea. There was actually a gentleman in the 1800s, I think it's Charles Beek. Have you heard of him?
Oh, yes.
We went and started reading what he had done, and he was absolutely a proponent of a Gulf of Aqaba crossing, and he was a proponent that the mountain was in Saudi Arabia. And I don't know if you know this, but he was punished for that. He was a very awarded scholar, and he was a geographer, and he was a biblical scholar. And when he came back to England, he actually was stripped of his medal, one of his prestigious medals, because people couldn't think of the idea that this would possibly have been the way it happened, or where it might be. But there were other scholars like Frank Moore Cross, a Dead Sea Scrolls scholar, who also looked at this, and because of the connection to Midian, and there are other connections there. And I do know that when I was in Saudi Arabia, we went to a museum, and there with Jim and Penny, and one of the man who was in charge of the museum started talking about the fact that the Israelites were in Saudi Arabia, and that they wandered, and that they came up through this from the south. And they came up, and there wasn't a problem at all with that idea. So part of it is that in my particular role as a filmmaker is I'm a journalist. And so I'm going to basically try to understand what the possibilities might be, as opposed to saying, oh, no, there's no possibility here. But obviously there's a great reaction against it, reactions over history, because people are set in the way they think about things. So, but I think that it's, so I'm excited to explore it and to understand it. And it basically has strengthened my own faith once I've been able to see these different patterns.
Political correctness is nothing new. Political correctness concerning someone's attitude toward the Bible in history, this has been going on as long as people have been trying to prove that there is no God and that we're just the result of aberrant chance mutations in the purely mechanical universe. That is being protected by academia and even Bible schools. You found that in Patterns of Evidence that there are actual entire Bible schools and seminaries that have been so embedded in this historical narrative of when the Exodus happened that they refuse to look at the evidence?
I think that it's threatening. And if they feel that their idea is threatened, they don't want to engage in it. And I think that what we decided was that it was better to basically just go to the public and actually make a film that creates an argument, as opposed to be in a circumstance where you are held to the rules of the academy. Basically say, well, let's understand what people are saying, and let's see how much sense they're making. Because sometimes they're not making as much sense as they need to make. And so you're going, yeah, well, I can't quite buy what you're selling here, and this makes more sense to me. And so it makes more sense to me that the Bible has a historical pattern that's showing up than it does that the chronology is sacred. And the thing that I was surprised by was that people were more upset that we were suggesting there might be something wrong with the chronology than that the Bible was not historically accurate. And these were people in Bible universities and colleges. They were more troubled, deeply upset that I would suggest that the chronology, that hey, let's take another look at this, than they were that people were saying there's no evidence here, and they could live with that.
That really is the sad state of religion, in my opinion. We have just a couple minutes, Tim. We have Jim and Penny Caldwell that are going to be with us this weekend. You are in Saudi Arabia with them. You are at Mount Sinai with them. They're going to be taking us on that journey. Joel Richardson, who came back with the drone footage, 4K footage, which actually has seen more evidence that neither the Caldwells, I know that you didn't see it, the Caldwells didn't see it, but he has more evidence, and Jim and Penny are going to present that. Andrew, I believe you have also spoken with him, and he is here going to be showing some of his footage on that. Is it encouraging that that more and more people have been able to get in there and get this information out?
Yes, and basically what I've decided was that these people, such as the Caldwells and Andrew and Joel, they're all part of the story. They're part of the journey of investigating this, just like Charles Beek and others that have throughout history had this magnetism to search for the journey and the route and the evidences for the Bible. That's what I started to understand, was that they were becoming a part of the story of the Exodus, and so I've included them in this larger investigation, because I'll tell you what, you look at Ron Wyatt and people have been critical of him and the different things that he's pursued and said and whatever. But I looked at it as well, and I realized that a lot of people never went to search for Noah's Ark, or they never went to search for Mount Sinai. What caused this man to go and search for these things when others were, just sort of armchair quarterbacks? And so that's part of the story.
I thank you, Tim, for being a part of this and taking the time away. I know you got to get right back to the editing right now, and I'm looking forward to the next film coming out, and we'll have you back here, a live presentation. But get back to work. You've got the work of the Almighty that you have to do. Thank you for taking a break and being with us, Tim.
Well, thank you, everyone, for hearing a little bit of what we're doing, and thank you, Michael.